Hey, it's White Boy Chris. If the Pat Downs ever made you laugh, then join our Patreon and support us. Get bonus content, a t-shirt, or an autographed copy of Rabbit, Miss Pat's autobiography. Visit MissPatComedy.com for the link to the Patreon, and while you're there, join our Facebook group.
Welcome to another episode of the Pat Down. I'm here with Chris.
Spangle. Your best buddy?
Small-eyed motherfucker. And
if I were in charge, you'd be rich.
What's up, y'all?
If you was in charge.
If I was in charge of things, you'd be rich. I promise you. I will make you rich.
I can see you doing some Django shit with me.
Twist, though, you'd be Leo DiCaprio.
Stay tuned after the music. We're going to see if Chris become a slave owner.
Django!
You better get up, get out, and tune in to this podcast. This Pat spit the truth, spit the real fact. Nothing but the ugly, classy at the same time. Pat got the flavor, these are not your same lines. That's the politics, she been on the real grind. It could be pretty but ugly at the same time. Just tune in, put your lock on the spin down. Ain't no need for the wait and turn it up now. What you talking about? Is it real though? And cut the game, you get no play like Nintendo. You wasted time, turn it up, nothing but the ugly. Straight off the top, everything she say, you know it's funny. Full blast, this a taste of the future. Listen on your iPhone, on your desktop computer. Share it, tweet it, ain't no way to beat it. Nothing but the ugly, turn it up and gon' repeat it.
Can y'all hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Hold on.
What we going to talk about? You know what we should talk about? What we talked about in the kitchen, marriage.
A little, there's details I wouldn't want to put in there.
Okay.
Do you want to do the fan questions and stuff?
Yeah.
Let's do the fan questions then.
I ain't gonna stay. Come on.
But you know what? She gotta start talking to like old people who've been married a long time and who don't. What is that word when women just do what men tell them to do? What is that called?
Obedience.
Awesome.
Awesome obedience. We are recording that, just so you know. Okay, you might want to edit that for Chris's behalf.
What is it? I'm trying to think. When you like sequester them, what is it called? Surrender.
Yeah, I know what you're trying to say.
Because Miss Jenny said, "Well, you supposed." I said, "No,
Submission.
Submission to your man." Well,
You're supposed to submit to his leadership.
Are we rolling?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not gonna submit to you. This is not a movie theater. This is not an admission.
I need your ticket.
Yes, the ticket to get the fuck out of my face.
Have you seen them people who snuggle in snacks and shit in baby strollers or baby carriers? They put like, this one dude had Wingstop. He had Wingstop.
Did they catch him?
No, they didn't catch him. He cracked all that shit. Oh, he was eating it. I think he went to go see that Deadpool and Wolverine, but he had a baby carrier with a blanket over the top. But inside was 2 things of chicken wings from Wingstop and some Hennessy, I think, and like some candy that he just put in the little baby carrier. He's like, oh, this me and my daughter. We finna go watch Deadpool. But he pulled it out and it was just, that's how they snuggle in their snacks. I seen one person, they had a fake baby. Like, so they got, them little baby winter coats. Mm-hmm. They just stuffed it full of all the shit they were going to eat at the movie theater. It was like juju fruits and fucking.
Well, the movie theater food costs so fucking much.
That's how they make their money.
Yeah.
They don't make any money.
It's like a
off
gas
of the
station.
movie.
They don't make money on the gas.
And then when I realized that's how they make their money, I was like, well, let me stop being an asshole, because if I own this business, it hurts.
That's why I only buy popcorn.
I think I've asked you this before, but there is an apocryphal tale around Bob and Tom. Apocryphal tale that you once, before you got on a plane, came to Bob and Tom to get snacks out of the snack closet and then went to the airport. Is that true?
That's kind of far from my fucking house. I probably took them the day before if I was there.
I also have heard from a former open of yours that you'd go to like Applebee's in Des Moines, and you'd eat like a half or 3/4 of the food, call the manager and go, all this is terrible, I wanted it for free.
That's probably Dion.
No, it's not
I
DM.
never said
no,
that.
No,
'cause
no,
I don't think
No.
I've ever seen you do that.
I don't do that. That's a lie.
It seemed far fetched.
Yeah, it's
Back in the
I've
day
never
when you
seen
didn't
you
have
do that.
money, did you have schemes to try and get things for deals like that?
I mean, I wouldn't just do it to doing it. It would have to be bad. One thing I cannot stand is bad fucking service and bad fucking food.
That's true.
But so because my whole thing even when I didn't have no money, I would at least want to give you $10 because my daughter was a waitress, and I remember having a conversation with waitress. She's like, "Well, this is how we pay our bills. If you don't tip me, and I'm waiting on all these tables, I don't have no money. Also, I know that's how Dion paid his bill when we was as comics. I mean, when we was coming up in the game, and he was a waitress, and I worked at Taco Bell, a waiter. That's how he paid his bill. So I always want to at least give $10.
Yeah,
I would never leave $2 tip. 5 is the least. If I could spare 10, I would. And so, no, I wouldn't do that.
Here's the thing that I would say about her. Her definition of good service versus, say, my definition of good service are not the same.
What do you mean?
She's a lot more bougier when it comes to what she wants and how she wants it for her food. For me, if I have a bad experience with a restaurant, I just go, I'm not gonna raise a fuss. I'm not gonna send it back. I'm just, I know better next time. I'm not gonna come here. She'd be like, nah, go remake all my shit. I'm just not that way.
Well, I'm not gonna say it like that. I mean, I want good service. I'm not a reviewer. If I now, I'm never gonna write a review. I'm definitely gonna get my kids or either Jasmine to write the review. For me. I'm just not gonna.
This
do that.
was not good.
Yeah, I'm just not gonna do it. Or I type up some shit all spelt wrong and just fast and say, you know what I'm trying to say, fix it. I don't like to bash people businesses,
right.
Especially a small business and a black-owned business.
Because you're kind of both. You kind of you're a black-owned business, but you're also a small business, like you have people that work for you.
Yes,
Yeah.
like when I was buying furniture for my house, and I'm black, y'all. Y'all
What?
listen to this podcast. I'm an African American.
I'm out.
And a lot of times I want to, 90% of the time, I'm going to say a lot of times I want to support the black community first. Because a lot
Unless
of
it's
black
Willie
business.
in your driveway. Willie doing your driveway, then you're out.
But when I was buying the furniture.
Maybe put that one behind the
You just have a
paywall.
flashback behind it. I think you just triggered it.
Well, I want to support black businesses, and I want to support small business. So I'm a type of person. I've always shopped at Harrody's, and even when I didn't have money, we would go and get credit at Harrody's because they had better furniture. And now that I know what even higher end furniture is, and I know how to get it, I just said I want to buy my furniture from a black owned store or a small business. So I found this place in Peachtree City called Studio 34.
Okay.
They're white. But what I loved about them is that they was a small business. It's a daughter-in-law, it's a husband and his mom.
Yeah.
And I walked in there. They didn't know me from fucking Adam. And I said, hey. No, what happened was I saw this lady on TikTok with some furniture. And I said, and I Googled it. I put it in Google and it says Bernhard. Well, I can't buy Bernhard furniture.
Why?
Because I'm not, you can't just order it like that. Some of it.
You got to be a member or something?
Well, no, you got to be a furniture store like Harrody's. So the bed I wanted, somebody ordered a particular fabric on it, and I wanted that fabric.
Okay.
So I put that in the Google search, and Google search said these are the people in your area,
Gotcha.
in Peachtree City or in your area in Atlanta that sells it. So I had my daughter-in-law drive over to Peachtree City, and I said, show her this picture.
She's getting choked up about this.
I said, show her this picture, and this is what I want. And the lady customer service at this place, and bleep out that store because I don't want nobody to know where I live at. But the lady in this store, at the store, was so nice that I ended up buying a living room suit, a dining room suit, and check this out. Harrody's sold the same dining room suit. But since they were small businesses, I wanted to support them instead of a big change like Harrody's.
Yeah.
Now, I love Harrody's, like I love Chick-fil-A, but Harrody's didn't need the money like the small business did. So I bought as much as I could from that small business because I love good customer service and I love building relationships. Like I called that lady, I walked in the store, I said, hey, I want these lamps. And my friend's like, these some badass lamps. And the fucking lamps was $800. So I said, okay, I'm gonna take this home, and if I want it, I'll let you know.
The lamp?
She's like, she's like, they're in my living room now. She was like, sure, Miss Pat. But I built a relationship with this small
She just
business.
let
Oh,
you-
okay. You should say that part first. I thought you just took that lady's lamp.
Well,
$800.
she left the gun out of it.
I'll let you know if I'm gonna bring these back or not.
No, but
You built a relationship where you could say, "Hey, I'm gonna
trusted
take
you.
this home."
Yes,
Yeah, okay.
yes, and I love them for that. And if I don't like something, they'll come back and get it. You can't do that with a big store. And I'm 52. That's what I'm used to. I'm used to your mama can send you to the corner store and say, my mama said, give me 4 pack of cigarettes and two half a pint of gin. And she say, I can have some chips. Oh,
Yeah.
sure. Bag it up, give it to your mama. They write it down.
Right.
Those are the good old days. They're gone.
For sure.
But to have that type of customer service here in 2024, where it's trust, and I brought a bunch of her stuff home the other day, and I say, hey, she said, I might be in your neighborhood. I said, well, come pick this up. I don't like that, but can you bring me this?
I feel like it's changing though. Like the days of Applebee's from our parents' generation and like the big chains and some of those are,
So you know what happened?
People are choosing more like bespoke local places.
So Red Lobster went out of business, right?
Right.
But they didn't go out of business. What happened is these short sellers came in and took over the company. They ran it into the ground and were making money off the demise through the stock market of Red Lobster and all these other businesses going under. And then they bought the real estate property that Red Lobster was on. Because when you used to be independently owned and operated, Red Lobster, but you own that property that the Red Lobster was on.
Right.
So then when these new people took over the main company, they started charging the people who were franchise owners for the land.
yeah.
And they made the prices so astronomical that these people literally couldn't afford to keep the businesses open. And so the stock plummeted. And as the stock was plummeting, they were short selling on the fact that it was going to lose. And they were making all this money. This is the big thing behind GameStop, is they were trying to do that to GameStop. And that's why you have this quote unquote meme stock. It's because they were short selling on the hope that this company would fail and they would never have to pay all this money back. Well, people started buying the stock and the prices went up. And when you try to buy short, if I hope I'm saying this right, is that the point is you buy something at a price, the price goes down, you buy more of it, and you borrow shares at that price. Mm-hmm. So you can do whatever you want with the shares you borrow as long as you replace them. And if the price goes
So what
down,
happened?
it's cheaper to replace them.
Red Lobster got saved?
No, Red Lobster, they're pretty,
closing down.
They're pretty much done. They're cooked.
Yeah.
But they tried to do that to GameStop, and then this kitty guy was telling people, hey, I'm going to buy this and I'm going to hold on to it because the math isn't mathing. They were borrowing more shares that were available. And when you borrow a share, you have to give it back at some point. And if the price goes up, you have to buy it at that price. What they were doing is they were making the price go down. So when
They can buy it all.
Exactly. And so that's this whole big thing.
So did GameStop get saved?
They're yes. GameStop has like $4 billion in cash right now.
AMC theaters, that happened to them too.
Yep. They were trying.
So
they were
who-
purposely trying to tank these companies, these nostalgic places like Red Lobster and
Why?
Apple, because they were making shit ton of money when they bought the stock at like $44, right? And then they would borrow, say, 100 shares, but they would make the business fail, so the price would go down, and then they would buy the shares they borrowed at those lower prices, and they would keep all the profit from the first borrowing. So they would make all this fucking money, and once the company goes out, you don't have to pay those shares.
So how do
back.
you make the company fail? I mean, I understand the stock market, but a nigga still got to go in there and eat.
They were so they made it to where the individual Red Lobsters couldn't
Couldn't afford
operate.
the rent.
They couldn't afford to operate.
Because Walmart is the biggest landlord and property owner in the country. Because the value of Walmart is largely their real estate. Mm-hmm. And not just the revenue, but they own the real estate. And so a lot of these companies like Red Lobster, they own the real estate, and it's in prime locations. So if you take over the company, you could make a ton of money just on selling where the Red Lobster was to other developers.
On top of the short selling that they were doing.
Yeah.
So I have some property here where I bought a house, and very small house, and it was in very bad condition. I got it for a really good price, so I paid cash for it, and I knocked it down. because I didn't want. Georgia is very big with squatters. And we all know the story of how hard it is to get a fucking squatter out your house. Mm-hmm. Well, I try to keep the grass cut over there. It's kind of in a warehouse community, kind of like an industrial community.
Yeah.
Next to it is a bunch of warehouses where they sell all different types of, like if you take something back to Target and these people go beat on them big trucks and liquidators. Yeah. So it's a bunch of that going on where the house is sitting, and so. Out of nowhere, I just started getting these crazy ass calls. It's not even a house there. I have an architecture plan. I was gonna build a house there and put a kid in there. And so the man next to me, he was like, "Oh, I give you $100,000." I didn't pay that much for the house. And I said, when a person is just offering you money I said, well, what's going on? They said, I'm trying to diversify my portfolio. I said, me too, nigga. So tell me what's going on.
Yeah, I will after you sell me this shit.
Yeah, but so I found out that I can go and have this house. It's a residential house, but since it's by so much warehouse shit, I can get it rezoned for commercial. And probably sell it for 3 to 4 times more than what they trying to give me the $100,000. So I'm like, I'm going to go and get it rezoned.
Yeah.
Because it's right next to a fucking warehouse.
Well, the politician you got to pay off is going to cost you some money.
Huh?
You ever tried to zone anything or rezone? That can be a years-long fight. Years long.
Well, I don't think so in this case because it's so much in a residential area. Really, it's only like 4 houses on the street and the rest of it is like warehouses.
I'm just saying. It could be a whole thing.
I mean, it could be, but you always look at the negative shit. I'm not listening to you.
That's just because I live in the real world and you enjoy. Go ahead. Let's see what happens.
Well, I ain't had that much fight in my life.
Well, this is a big problem with real estate that Kamala, I mean, as we're recording this, is like making a push on housing because these private equity funds move in and take over.
That's what it is.
These giant hedge funds take over Red Lobster.
My friend actually go out and buy and redo. He buy a lot of houses and sell them to the hedge funds.
That's why a lot of
patch them up and they fuck up community because real people don't live in them.
And the
families don't live in them.
Airbnbs got capped here in Atlanta because so many private equity funds were buying Airbnbs, hiring property managers, trying to make money off the Airbnbs.
Thank God.
People can't. There's not enough available housing, so that's why she's proposing $25,000 in tax credits to a new home built.
Who?
Kamala Harris.
You buy a new house?
You build a new house, you get $25,000 on your taxes.
Well, goddamn, y'all need to be voting for Kamala.
You should have waited a year. But she's trying to increase the supply of housing because that's what the problem is. There's too many regulations against building houses and apartments.
We was talking about that earlier about how the rent is crazy because these investors come in here and they really don't give a fuck about the community, and then they make the rent so high on top of like where I grew up in the West End. Those places are going through gentrification, so they're pushing those poor people out because the parents have now died or the grandparents have died, and it's not affordable anymore.
It's a problem in the suburbs because people are holding on to their houses. So in a place like Plainfield, where like my mom is in her 60s, she doesn't live in Plainfield anymore. She moved to a new house. But if she had her house paid off, like a lot of those folks do, they don't want to sell these multifamily homes or they're homes that like multiple people can live in, right?
I wish I didn't sell my house in Plainfield.
Right. So like your house in Plainfield is a great example. You could fit a lot of people in there. So one person who's older in their 60s will be living in that house, hanging on to it because they go, I'm going to live till I'm 90. I don't know what the real estate market's going to be like. I might need this investment. My value is going to go up. So I'm just going to hang on to this. So it leaves families like mine that are looking for a house that we can grow into with restricted supply. So the cost of a house just goes up. So people don't want to sell. That's a lot of these suburban mega churches are dying because there's no young people coming in. So like churches that had 5,000 people a Sunday 20 years ago now have 1,000 because their communities are dying in these suburbs.
Let me ask you guys.
My house is worth $537,495,000. And
wait, what?
Where you lived in Plainfield? Mm-hmm. What did you buy it for? $250, I bet.
I don't even. Well, mine was supposed to be $250, but they couldn't get it to. It wasn't enough ranches in my community, and when they went outside, I think it was like $234. I sold it for $507.
Reagan and I are looking for houses, and she sent me one today that she went to look at today, and it's like $300,000. I'm like, what's wrong with it? There's got to be something wrong with it if it's that
They
cheap.
still got my pictures up.
Oh, cute.
So you were talking about cap and rent earlier. Do you think there should be a cap on building materials as far as when it comes to constructing homes? You know, homes are always going
The
to be
material have went down.
But what I'm saying is if we cap material so that they can't say, oh, inflation is causing, like wood is always going to cost $50. No matter when you buy it, wood is $50, right? Do you think that, as opposed to say, you know, somebody who's an entertainer like me, I can set a price for whatever it is you're willing to pay, you know, the things that people across all walks of life need, do you think there should be a cap on those goods?
No, because price controls, rent controls, these are historically shown to be bad in terms of controlling prices. It actually makes things more expensive. So if you put something like rent control, it actually ends up restricting the amount of apartments and housing that's built. The problem with rent control, for instance, in like New York City, is that when that was put in place, developers no longer wanted to go like work and develop in those spaces because they said it's just too much red tape for me to actually develop and build housing units in New York City. And so you end up restricting your supply as demand goes up, which raises the prices. So it's the same concept. Like the concept of price gouging to me is a misnomer. Like a line is a form of price gouging, right? You are trying to control the supply and the demand to meet a certain price.
That's the thing. Houses are never not in demand.
But when lumber was really high after the pandemic, that was because we increased.
Couldn't get it in.
Yeah, you couldn't produce enough.
Right.
Because the government, right or wrong, had through the pandemic restricted the ability to produce it.
You want to dip your toes in the waters of the betting world, but don't know where to start? DraftKings Sports has you covered. Go big with DraftKings Sportsbook, the #1 place to bet touchdowns. Download DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code PATDOWN. That's code PATDOWN for new customers to get $250 and get 1 month of NFL Plus Premium. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours.
I'm not. So
no, I think that when you do price controls, you end up making the problem worse because you end up disrupting the supply and demand of all of this. And so you end up with higher prices and it doesn't actually increase supply, which is what we need. We need more egg producers, but you're going to get less egg producers because they don't want to be targeted by the government as somehow price gouging. So I think the impulse of what she's talking about, for instance, is not unfair. It's just not going to work. It's one of the most easily disproven economic theories that price controls work when they don't in like economic history. They don't work.
Yeah, let me say this. So you telling me the price where I think Joe Biden did this, took the price of insulin down, don't work?
But that is the government dealing with its suppliers. So it kind of
right. That's what
that's different. Where
no, it's not.
No, the government is buying insulin from Lilly, for instance, and so what they say is, hey,
well, the government is buying wood from fucking Home Depot or whatever the fuck the wood come from before it gets to Home Depot.
No, what the thing you're talking about is where the government says, hey, we're not paying this price because what Lilly and other people do is they say, the government is the buyer, I'm going to inflate it. It happens, I'm sure, in your life where they say, oh, I bet Ms. Pat has a lot of money. Let me increase the price. And so
that's where
what
I'm
the
saying
Biden
the
administration
price fix should be just for things that everybody has to fucking use.
And
I'm not
like
saying
insulin, like milk, like eggs. I mean, you
not
shouldn't
even so much as that because you don't have to buy eggs. You don't have to buy milk. Right,
you have to buy food. So, like, but let's be honest, the government don't control the price of food.
No, it's the marketplace. It's not one individual in the chain that controls any of it.
Right, and
it's all set.
My question is when it comes to fundamental goods that everybody has to use in order for society
like toilet
to function,
paper.
Right? There should be my personal opinion. I'm just asking the question: do you think that, say, capping the price at lumber is $50, no matter whether we need shit ton of houses built or no houses built? Lumber's always $50.
You have lumber high in its pricing for about 6 months, and then lumber pricing went down. if you were to do caps, you'd have to go to the regulatory agency and ask them to lower the caps. So you actually end up with a much slower ability to get your prices down than if you were just doing a pure marketplace play. So when you have like the egg distributors setting the prices and the multiple buyers, because it's not like one group produces eggs and one group is buying eggs. It's hundreds selling to a distributor, and then the distributor is selling to dozens of groceries, and they're all like trying to be competitive with their price.
Right,
so it comes down a lot faster.
So I guess so. My question would be, why not subsidize those things for everybody's individual needs?
We do that with things like SNAP and EBT.
Right.
So for people who do need it, there are benefits. So if for the basic
So why wouldn't it be a
necessities of life, we
benefit
already
for that
have those.
company? So we need you to produce X amount of eggs this year. If you do, great. If you don't, that's bad. So we have to figure out a way to keep you producing whatever the market is demanding.
Yeah.
But you individually can't say, you know what, because I feel like it, I'm going to make insulin $9,000. Like
It's
that
called
Scarelli
greed.
guy.
It's
You know what I
greed.
mean?
It's not greed. It's basic marketplace functions.
No, it's greed.
No, I mean Lilly.
why
Lilly
would
doesn't
you-
just like develop a drug and have like 9 million employees because they just want to have. They have to pay for those employees. They have to pay for their benefits. They have to pay for their
but
buildings.
come on,
They have to
come on.
pay
But
for
you
the
know how
drugs.
they do that, right?
But let's be honest, Chris. For the price of insulin, what insulin will cause in poor people and people, even people like my husband who takes insulin, who when we can afford it. Like when I was talking about that Ozempic drug that time, and that's a diabetic drug, and it's supposed to work way better than insulin, right? That's what they gave it to him for. So when that drug came out, and the insurance company was paying for it, then it got so popular with weight loss, and my husband needed it, but he couldn't, insurance stopped. Fortunately, I was able to pay $1,200 for a month's supply. But think of the people who needed the drug for their diabetic, but could not afford it. So I understand what Dion said. Why not just keep the price the same all along? For
And
everybody.
then if the
'Cause
demand
you got
increases,
insulin-
you subsidize what they would lose if they didn't raise the price.
Yeah,
So
so
who's subsidizing
The
it?
government is.
Right. So
Yeah.
we're just printing more money, which raises,
Money's all fake.
But that's not
It's
true.
not backed by anything.
The
It's
more-
not backed by anything.
I know,
It's
but the
backed
more
by
you
a
print,
promise.
the more you print, the worth less. We are in the
It's
last
only-
5 years.
but
Your
see,
dollar
but
is
here's
worth
the thing.
75 cents compared to 5 years ago.
If it's only on things that are absolutely necessary, fundamental things like lumber, like insulin, you can raise the price of gas up and down as much as you fucking want to. You don't have to fucking drive. But you can't build a house with straw. You can't fucking live off. If you need insulin, there's no getting around that. So what I'm saying is if we can have a consensus of we all agree, hey, these are the things on the list that are a set price. And if demand increases, the price stays the same, and then we figure out a way to.
You know who's going to make that list, though? The companies that have the biggest marketplace share, who will directly benefit from getting the most money, and they're going to try to cement their position through their lobbyists. This was tried during the Great Depression, and all of what you're suggesting was done in the Great Depression, and it prolonged it by 8 years
but why
compared to
can't we
other
just?
crashes.
But it's really just called caring about people.
You're saying that the people who work at Lilly don't care about diabetics? That's
No,
just
they
fundamentally untrue.
It's money, Chris. It's greed.
They
But
care more about
you don't
the money
work for
than
free. You don't work for free. The people at Lilly who work in the diabetic division, of which one of my family members was one, they all do care about what they're doing. They also just don't work for free.
Well, the people
they
who
also
work,
don't develop
the
drugs
people,
for nothing.
But people who work at Lilly don't set the price. The company set the price.
The transaction between the company and the buyer sets the price. So it's the negotiation between what you're willing to pay for.
But is it? But let me ask you
sets the
this. Let
price.
me ask you this: is it okay where all of this bullshit they put in our food versus you're a diabetic, or if I'm a diabetic, that I should be able to afford my medicine and you can't?
I'm not saying that's fair. I'm saying it is just the reality of life. Like Lilly has only so much supply for a diabetic drug. Like you can go in there as the government and say, we demand you produce more. But if you don't have the workers who are trained to do it the right way, if you don't have the materials to make it, how can you realistically demand a company do something if they can't find the workers? It's like eggs. You can't get enough eggs produced right now because we keep killing chickens because of disease. We can't find enough workers because of immigration restrictions. Like we have high prices because of a lot of government intervention and marketplace problems.
So is it okay with you that Ozempic drug for diabetic people, whether they use it for weight loss or not, is okay that a company like Lilly can ask for $1,200 for insulin?
I'm saying that they're not asking for $1,200 because they just go, I want this to be $1,200.
It costs so much
but
less in
supply.
other countries. How does the price for insulin
because the marketplace in America is so much bigger than a place like Germany with like what, 20 million,
Canada
22 million
too.
people, 22 million people in Canada.
You're not going to admit it's greed.
There's 370 million fat fucks in America.
But you're not going to admit it's greed.
No, I'm not going to admit it greed because I don't think it's greed.
Not
It's
every
basic
person
supply
in
and
America
demand.
needs insulin.
No, they don't.
Right?
No.
People-
I'm fat and I don't need insulin. You fat and you don't need insulin.
No.
So we're too.
The
People are
idea-
not taking
fat.
insulin because they want to take insulin.
The idea that the marketplace, Germany having less people, so it's cheaper for them, as opposed to we have more people and it's more expensive for us.
But they have less demand and more supply.
How do you
because
know?
they have
How do
different
they have
supply
more
chains.
supply if they're getting it from us? It's already here.
Because they have less people in the marketplace. They
How do you
manufacture
know?
it there.
How do you know?
Because I have family members who work in
Germany?
Not in Germany, but I have family members who worked in the financial division of Lilly, and I've talked to them about this
let me
stuff.
say let me say this to you. There's a part of you. There's a part of you that I love like a brother, but then there's a part of you that don't give a fuck about some people.
That's not the case at all.
No, yes, it is, Chris.
You
Because
want to make things
make
more expensive because you don't know how they work.
I don't want to make things more expensive. I'm just saying, if the government can go in and tell Eli Lilly, whoever the fuck they told, take that drug down take insulin down from whatever the fuck it was to $39, I think it is now, because old people could not afford it, then there's a problem.
Do you know what the number one crime in Florida is now? Medicare fraud. You know why? Because the government has unlimited resources for me to rip off as a company.
Well,
because if you remember the ventilators during COVID, every company started rushing to make ventilators to get money from the government.
Well, it's nothing,
and they made shitty ventilators.
Can I say this?
And we didn't even need the ventilators.
Well, it doesn't. You gonna have people that stealing no matter what. Stop focusing on the people who take and focus on the people who need.
But you cannot separate the two.
Yes, you can.
You cannot.
Yes, you
yes, cannot.
Yes, you can. Yes, you can.
When you guarantee a payday, you're going to get fraud.
That's not. You're going to get frauded no matter what.
Whereas the marketplace goes, are there comedians that you know are pieces of shit? And you know that because you're in the industry. You are an expert in this industry. But when you put a bunch of politicians in charge of something who don't know anything about the subject matter, they make it worse because they appoint people that they like and donated to their campaign to run things like this.
But the thing with you is you okay with people charging whatever the fuck they want to charge for their rent. You okay with people you okay with the government not stepping in and saying, no, it should be a cap on the amount on the price of insulin to save lives. You
have to retort to me is that I don't care. I'm not hearing anything from you to say how your ideas work.
Let me say this to you. I had my father, when I picked my father up from Grady Hospital here and I drove him back to Indianapolis, I don't think I really knew you at the time, but I knew you. My father had one leg. They let him go out the hospital. They didn't give me a wheelchair or anything because they said Medicaid, Medicare would not give him a chair and I'm moving him to another state. I literally put my daddy in a wheelchair. They took it at my car. I drove my daddy 8 hours. I pulled over on the side of the road because he only had one freshly cut off leg. Changed his diaper every fucking day. Let me back up. My daddy, they gave him medicine that morning. I didn't have no Medicaid, no Medicare. I pulled up at a pharmacy and the man told me, I think at the time his medication was like $800. I'm a struggling comedian. I didn't have it. I said, sir, I don't have it. And he has not taken his medicine. and I started to cry. I never forget this shit. The pharmacist say, stop crying. Me and your daddy take the same insulin. Take my medicine. And he gave me his medicine because him and my daddy took the same medicine. Had he not done that, my father probably would have died. I had to drive my daddy back to Indianapolis, apply for Medicaid, Medicare, because I didn't have that kind of money to pay for insulin. It was like $600-700 a pop. And my daddy had cancer. He was on all other kind of stuff. That pharmacy gave my daddy that medicine for free, Chris. Yeah. When I got him back to Indiana, I had to apply really quick because I knew he was going to run out of that 30-day dosage and I wasn't going to be able to afford it. But let me say this. I had $39 in my pocket that day. If the medicine was reasonable, I could have paid for it and got my father back to where I needed to go.
Right. We're talking about two different things.
No, we're not.
Yes, we are. You are talking about individual instances like that and the morality of the situation. But the question is about how do you supply many millions of Americans a good, a huge supply chain? How do you manage that? And how is that managed? And how do you get to the fairest price?
But do you really think the fairest price for insulin, whether I'm rich or I'm poor, is because when you make a price of something, I always try to when I sell my tickets, and I always try to say I want the person here to be able to buy it, and I want the people here to be able to buy it. Right. But when you make insulin way up here, only the people up here can afford it if they don't have health insurance. And sometimes insulin is high even with Medicaid, Medicare, and even with fucking insurance.
So I take a medication every month that is $600 a month. Mm-hmm. There's no generic for it. It works really well for me, and I don't want to switch. So I called the drug maker and I said, I want to take your medicine. What can you do to help me? My insurance will not cover all of this. It's going to cost me like $300 a month. How can you help me? They said, we're going to give you a coupon that you can use every month.
So
that's going to make
everybody
this.
To call the drug makers.
Yes, there are ways to do this.
Chris,
how much was the coupon for?
It makes it $10 a month because they want people to take their medicine.
Well, everybody don't know that, Chris, and everybody don't have the resources to do that. And
they can't make a phone call.
But they don't. Everybody, Chris, you're not living in the real world.
You're not living in the real world.
Chris,
you want what you want as opposed to looking at what is going to get the best effective outcome.
Just because it was a yes to you, it might be a no to somebody else. I mean, you might have just answered the phone. Somebody who answered the phone for you on the right day. I'm 52. I've never heard of calling a drug manufacturer saying, I cannot afford your medication until you told me, Kim, and our audience that today. I never heard of that.
Yeah.
So when I had my daddy who had a freshly cut off leg in the car.
You had the same experience I had.
Well, I didn't.
You met somebody that gave a shit. You met somebody in the system that cares.
So what I'm saying is, why can't the government or why can't we make prices that give a shit about people? So
because you are going to end up giving power to people who don't give a shit about people. They care about pleasing lobbyists. You're giving power to a system that doesn't actually regulate the price. It regulates the price that benefits the people who have the best lobbyists. You end up with more fraud.
Is it okay?
You don't end up with what you're desiring. You end up with what you hate.
With fraud. You always going to end up with fraud.
Because that's how it works. That's what the point of the government.
There's nothing wrong with fraud.
Yes, there is.
There is. You went to jail for it, Miss Pat.
It's okay. You gotta steal a little bit. Everything can't be sold. It's some shit out there that need to be stolen a little bit. It's okay.
You can't. The problem is there's always going to be people that commit fraud.
You know, when you're sound like Miss Pat, an old white man. Sometimes you gotta steal.
Right. When you're in the free market system, you go out of business. You lose your business. If you try to steal from people. But when you're the government, you don't go out of business. You get a promotion.
Yeah, but Chris, I do think stuff like medication should have a cap on it. I do think stuff like rent should have a cap on it. I just think about the real people that lives in this world. I'm not saying that you gotta I give you an instant.
Financial fairness is a myth.
I think if you lived in that system, Pat, where the federal government was telling you where you had to set your rent, you'd hate it. And you'd buck at it. You'd rail against it on this podcast.
If that's all she had, Probably, but that's not.
Look,
that's the problem that I have.
I would only buck on it if now I would buck on it if the government said if my mortgage was $900, they said well the most you could charge is $700. Well, I can't eat $100 government, then I can't fucking live.
But they're the government and you have to.
But no, that's
you're
not
giving
realistic.
back to the rest. You're giving back to everybody.
Oh my!
Isn't it great?
No, Chris, because you're not being realistic.
Isn't it great to give back to people?
But the government would
You're
never
helping
say,
people.
No, the government would never say
Suck that $100 and love it because that's what's good for people.
See, now you being a cracker.
Damn.
You being a fucking cracker now, because that's not how it fucking works. The government is never going to tell you, oh, your rent is $800.
But see, he just
That's
flipped
exactly
the
what they would
flipped
do.
the argument on.
But that's exactly how it works. They tell you where you have to set the price. That's what we're talking about with price controls. They're not going to tell you that you have to cap your rent here. They're going to tell you you have to keep. It's going to get negotiated in Congress into set it at fair market price. Who do you think sets the fair market price? It's some government-connected business that is trying to cement their marketplace position, trying to keep competitors out, and the competitors are what make things cheap.
So you telling me if my rent is $800, they gonna come out with a fair market price of $400?
No, they're gonna come out and they're gonna say you have to charge $1,900 because that's what everybody in your area has to charge for this square footage. They'll have a formula because the formula makes it fair. It's not about you can't charge more than this. That's not how it ever works. It's you have to go by this formula that a government bureaucrat concocted, and everybody who plays within this system has to be a part of this system.
I think
so. They're not going to say, Miss Pat, you're very altruistic as a landlord.
I don't think they're going to say you're going to jail, Miss Pat, because you won't charge $1,900. You want to charge $800.
No, but they can put you into court or fine you into behaving.
Yeah, no, they'll come. They will. The government will absolutely come.
How many zoning people did you have to deal with on this house? How many different permits did you have to get on this house? How many people did you have to ask for permission to do things on your own property for this house? There's always someone who is monitoring what you're doing at the local and state levels.
Is that a problem?
Do you think it can be,
depending on what they're monitoring.
If you get the wrong inspector on the wrong day.
Yeah.
Well, I look.
As opposed to Miss Pat knows what's best and how to build her house. Her and her architect, who is financially liable for building a reliable house, like. At a certain point, you have to go, how many different layers of government do we have to deal with? Well, how you own a piece of property, you should get to do with your property what you think is best. You are successful. You bought this home. You know what's best for your renters, not some government formula.
But here's, I think, is what she's saying. It's because she started from the bottom and now she's here. Mm-hmm. She knows how hard it is to get to this level.
Sure.
And when you put all these unaffordable prices in place for these people, you can never, it's so hard to get out of it without help. How can we make it easier to help people? And if that means bringing the price of insulin down to $35 for, say, a 5-year period or whatever.
This is the problem of the argument. They're setting an argument about eggs and insulin and the things that they want to talk about. But the general affordability is because during the COVID pandemic, we shut down all of these supply chains, all of these businesses, and then we gave everybody a bunch of extra money. And we are going to disrupt those same supply chains and increase demand while capping supply with all of these controls. And we're going to do the exact same thing that made the inflation possible. Like you have these interventions that make things less affordable.
So we're living in a class society. So basically what you're telling me is if I give you enough money that you can go out and buy whatever you want and you bring the value of things down because more people have it. Like, this is a perfect class system. I'm going to make it so that you can't afford to come up here. That way I keep the prices right where they're at.
That's not always true. It is more true in a system where the government controls directly supply chains. Because then if you're Facebook, if you're Facebook, you want to control how the government regulates social media because you don't want Twitter or some other competitor coming in and participating and competing against you. And so you want, if you're Tyson Foods, to come in and help write the regulation for chicken.
But isn't that a monopoly?
It can be. That's why they want to break up, like Google, for instance. They're thinking of breaking it up because they have a monopoly on search.
So there should be, I guess what I'm hearing you say is that the more Eli Lillys there are that make insulin, that's how we get to the $35 cap.
We have more competition.
As opposed to saying, Eli Lilly, no matter what, make it $35. And you're saying, well, they can't do that. One is they don't have enough employees. Two, they don't have enough materials. And that's why it's falling.
And a lot of that is their own fault. They have their own internal restrictions, their own hiring processes that make this stuff hard to do. But if you have more options as a consumer and you can go, I can't get insulin, let me try insulin from these providers. If there's 4 suppliers of insulin, you're going to have higher prices than if you had 400.
I think we have a lot of supply of insulin.
We don't have enough. That's why we don't have enough insulin, which is why we have high prices. And so the more insulin we have, the lower the price. Because we have so much demand. Because the demand is because we have so many more diabetics.
The price, and correct me if I'm wrong, Biden brought the price down. And he capped it.
He brought the price down for Medicaid and Medicare users. So he brought it down. So it's kind of like he's hoping nobody fact checks him. So what Biden did this week, as we're recording, is he went to the companies and he said, look, we're the 500-pound gorilla. We're the federal government. We can set the price because if you want to sell to Medicare users, you have to figure out how to supply us at this level, right? And I think that's good because these companies do go to the federal government and say, yeah, we're going to mark this up 500% because you can just print the money, as opposed to like Pat going to them and saying like, it's why doctor's visits are so expensive because they can overcharge your insurance. But if you walk into your doctor and you say, I'm paying cash, it's going to be $20. It's going to be $100. It's not going to be $500. So we have built these overarching systems that allow us to pay more because we've spread around how much is being paid out. So like, how do you actually get more competitors into the system? How do you get more houses built? How do you get more apartments built? Well, you have to look at local regulations that prevent you from building houses. Are there like, well, you have to build to this spec, you have to build this many units, you have to do this. So people just go, well, I'm not going to build an Avon, then I'm going to go to Plainfield. And so then you end up with Plainfield being more attractive than Avon. So the more regulations you have, the less you have of competition, which is really what lowers prices. So that's why I'm against price controls. It's not because I don't care about diabetics. I am diabetic. I do care. It is personal. I understand it. But I look at the solution of government intervention as a way for monopolies to grow. It's a way for connected players to get more connections, to get more money for themselves, as opposed to actually fixing the problem. So they're going to act in their best interest. That's just what these companies do. Just like you do it, like I do it, like everybody does it. So if you say you have to build more houses, but we're only going to fund this type of house, and like 15 people have their say in what that type of house that you can build to get this financial regulation, well, then you end up with like 2 people who actually want to play in that field, and you don't actually get more houses. So like Joe Biden says all the time, we built 5 million new houses. It's like you really didn't. You just are like kind of taking credit for what was already in the pipeline from private developers. So you can never just like listen to a politician and think that they're telling you the truth. You have to like go and figure out what they're actually saying.
Well, I don't believe any of them. I'm just saying, like, my fight is always going to be for the underdog.
Yeah.
My fight is always going to be.
And I think you have to be skeptical of a politician that says they're for the underdog.
Well, all
because
of them
they're
say
usually
that when
not.
they're running. None of them. I mean, some of them are. Some of them, I mean, everybody got a...
No, they get you out of there if you really do fight for the underdog. You get 1 term at the most.
Yeah.
Yeah, like Bernie Sanders wasn't ever going to go anywhere. They screwed him at the convention on purpose. Like, he was a guy that was fighting for the underdog. I do think in some ways Donald Trump thinks about like not middle class, like blue collar workers. He just cares about social issues. He doesn't actually care about their financial well-being. Like if you're going to put a tariff on every good in the country, you're not making them more attractive. Like a Midwestern steelworker, they don't exist anymore. You're just going to make their life harder because the Dollar General is going to start charging more for goods that they import from China.
They're already closing.
Yeah. So it's like Donald Trump saying, I'm going to put a tariff to help support American-grown businesses is actually raising prices for the people that he says he wants to help. Like, it's foolish.
I mean, anything made in America is very high. I don't buy shit made in America.
But if you took that action, we'd change it. And like
that shit costs more.
There's going to come a point where Americans have to decide.
These was made in China, but For a low price of $20, you can get you a fan. Just go to MissPatComedy.com. Had they been made in America, I would have to charge you $75.
Look, there's going to come a point where we have to realize China's not our friend either, and we got to figure it out here.
Well, not until they stop making good hair.
Start looking for Vietnamese suppliers.
When they stop making good hair. I don't give a fuck what y'all do. You better. Well, I was.
Yeah.
But just wear that.
Yeah. Let me
Fuck
say
China's
this.
hair.
I'm kind of mad you didn't wear the braids for me this
Yeah,
weekend.
you better not blow up the hair factory in China. That's what you
promises.
better not do.
There's no greater industry that is an American industry than
It's a
the bomb
waste of
making
money.
The bomb making industry.
Yes. And these came from the Great Wall of China.
They do work, and it's hot as hell.
They were
in
made
here.
by Matt Damon's children.
Well, we got to wrap up because we're like.
Wasn't he in the last wall? That Chinese.
Yes.
Did you see that movie?
I stopped watching Chinese
Y'all
movies
see
after
this?
Tom Cruise
Miss
made one.
Pat show, and then we got what we got here?
Hot and flashy.
Hot
baby.
and flashy, baby. So make sure you get your fan now. It's on the Miss Pat Comedy website. Get your fan, girl, to keep that heat down. And with that said, we done heard Chris talk enough of this. What is he? What
Common
he call
sense.
We were talking about
What does he call himself?
a libertarian.
This libertarian bullshit. Not caring about the small people, but it's okay because we love Chris.
It's amazing as I can say all the ways that I do think it helps small people, and she still frames it that way.
Yeah,
You are
'cause
as bad as CNN.
you is as bad as Fox.
been saying it for years. You're fake
You as bad, and I've been saying it for years. You as bad as
fake.
Fox.
I got to deal with
You
both these
so
niggas. We wrapping it up. Thank y'all for tuning in to
You
another episode of the
so
Pat.
fucking fake.
Make sure you go to Miss Pat's website, MissPatComedy.com.
MissPatComedy.com it is. Thank y'all so much for tuning in to another episode of The Pat Down. Make sure you check out my website at MissPatComedy.com for all of my social media, my tour dates, my book. Make sure you spread the word about my podcast. Please rate and review. Please rate and review and share. Thank y'all so much, y'all. I've been Miss Pat.